this session, I wrote 81 words. For this session, I have written 133 words.
My husband and I are going on a little trip to the countryside to visit my in-laws for dinner, and I am going to bring along this book for the little trip. I think I started it earlier this year and I got like this much through.
For this session, I wrote 82 words. For this session, I wrote 45 words.
I am so incredibly sore today from my activity yesterday. My husband and I did a big fitness thing, a fitness event. Well, he did most of it and I was mostly his motivator, and I did my own thing on the side, but he did a hell mile with a group of his friends and I just worked out on the side, but I ended up pacing with him at the end, the final 2 rounds. So I am pretty beat up. So I think my struggle was mostly physical today, my writing, but I'm happy with where I ended. I'm gonna pick it up tomorrow.
For this session, I wrote 103 words.
I'm still feeling pretty run down from Sunday's activities, but slowly but surely recovering. I had donut and coffee this morning, and that really uplifted my spirits and got me into a great reading mood. It is also a very rainy, misty, and moody atmospheric kind of day. So I thought it'd be a perfect day to talk about some books I'm reading as a slow reader and what I've been diving into intentionally, slowly, romantically for the month of September. There are a lot of books I'm going to be talking about, and while it may seem like I'm very lightly reading, I'm actually doing quite the opposite and reading deeply instead. So to begin this book talk, I want to start with The Book of Disquiet by Fernanda Pessoa, one of my absolute favorite books. I have been reading this all year, and truly this is a very, very contemplative book to be savored indulgently and slowly. I have heard people call this book sad, and I disagree. I think it is heavy in the solitude, but solitude doesn't always mean that it's depressing or lonely. I think it's really from the point of view of the reader. If you are someone who views solitude as depressing, then it can be seen that way. But I think this is just really philosophical, poetic, and just a beautiful, insightful book. Next up, I have Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I have been reading this all month long. I'm almost finished with it. I am on page 610, and I have just been absolutely loving slow reading this. And interestingly, through reading Harry Potter, I have found a new appreciation for the spacing, the I guess 1.5-ish spacing. I feel like it really does allow for slower reading. I'm kind of fantasizing about my manuscript, and I think that as of now, these are just ideas, I want this kind of larger spacing so that it can be read slower. The Recognitions by William Gaddis. Very, very, very slow read. I am reading line by line, sentence by sentence. I am on page 22 of this copy of this version, and I am just absolutely loving this book. I have been reading it in tandem with Shakespeare, and in this massive volume, I have finished The Tempest. So now I am due to read The Gentleman of Verona. I've been reading the Aeneid of Virgil, and this is a verse translation by Alan Mandelbaum. I discovered him through the Divine Comedy, the edition of the Divine Comedy that I have of his, and I really enjoy his translations for the classics, and he is truly a poet. So I picked this up, and I've been reading this slowly in tandem with Bullfinch's Mythology. This is a copy I've had for a while, and I've been meaning to get into it, but I just never found the opportunity, and I thought that pairing this with this would be a great way to read, and that's what I've been doing. There is a more modern book on mythology that is really popular by Edith Hamilton, and I sampled that, but I really just couldn't get into it. It didn't feel romantic for me, so I'm back to Bullfinch. Although I will have to say Bullfinch is a little on the dry side, but I do find this a much more complex and rich reading experience. I'm going to use an analogy, and this is going to sound terrible, but this is the best way I can describe it. Reading Bullfinch is like cooking stew and eating stew, and reading Hamilton's mythology is like prepping soup from a can, heating it in the microwave, and eating it. And hey, don't get me wrong, I enjoy canned soup from time to time when I'm feeling really lazy and just am in need of a quick thing to eat. And actually yesterday I had some canned soup. I had some canned tortilla soup because I was just too tired to really fix anything for myself, and that did the job. But the point is, when you're cooking stew, like, there's a lot of labor and effort involved, and that said, the outcome is so indulgent, and it's always so worthwhile to fix yourself a good home-cooked hearty stew. And that's what reading Bullfinch is. It's a little bit slow, it's a little bit tedious, but I enjoy the complexity so much more. Bowstring. On the Dissimilarity of the Similar by Victor Shklovsky. I have been slow reading this, and I am really enjoying it. We have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson, and this is kind of my random pickup take on travels, go everywhere type book. This is a book I'm not super committed to giving my utmost focus and studious attention, and only because I have watched the movies first. The original film rendition of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, it is a beautiful film, super vibey, super atmospheric, pacing is so well done, truly a work of cinema. And because I watched that first, that's what led me to read this book, and I wanted to recapture the atmospheric vibes from the movie through the book, and that's why I'm reading it. But I already know generally what happens. I know, who done it, so I'm not super fixated on every single line and sentence. That said, it is well written, and I am enjoying reading this. I've learned that when I'm on the go, traveling, it is very, very difficult to give the same level of focus to my reading as I would at home. And so I have a designated book now to take with me when I'm just, on the go. Throw into my purse and we're ready. It also takes the additional mental work of thinking about what book I want to read on my travels and whatnot. And I've learned that what I think I'm going to be able to read is often not the case. So this is why I have a designated book to take with me on the go. Next up, we have Rebecca. I have been slow reading this because I do not want this to be over quickly. So I am on page 82 of this, which is like not very far, and I'm just absolutely loving it. The Canterbury Tales. Slow reading this as well. It's actually quite easy to read, and I found myself just zipping through it at first because the words just flow together so well. At least this version does. So I wanted to slow my roll. I really want to savor this. I don't want it to be over so fast. Now we have the library books that I have been slow reading, and I am pleasantly surprised because I enjoy these books so much up front that I ended up purchasing my own copies. So I'm waiting for them in the mail. And we're gonna start with Either or, a novel by Elif Batuman. And I mentioned this earlier that I didn't really enjoy the first book that she wrote, The Idiot. And I enjoyed it halfway, but then the other half I just did not. But I finished it. And I picked this up because I wanted to, I hope that it would redeem the first one. And it does. I think the passages are more fragmentary, and they present just various viewpoints, but I really enjoy the viewpoints and the fragments. So it's not really for the plot, which there really isn't one, that I read this book and enjoy this book. It's more for the presentation of various perspectives that I really enjoy. And it is through this book that I discovered another author of interest, and I ended up purchasing some books by him as well, and I'll mention that in another vlog. Dostoevsky's The Possessed. Strangely, I have been just zipping through this book. I'm already at page 100, and this is me slow reading. I looked into other translators' version of this book, and ultimately I chose Garnet's because I prefer her titling of this work. I believe it's also known as The Devils or The Demons, but I liked The Possessed, and I actually enjoy Garnet's vibe for Dostoevsky's The Possessed. So purchased a copy for myself. I'm really enjoying it. And finally, some digital books that I am reading. I am reading Paul Selig's The Book of Innocence, which is his second book in the trilogy of the Manifestation trilogy. I'm about 85% through, and that has been a slow read, but it has been really, really transformative for me. Next, this was a surprising one. I picked up a digital copy of Existentialists and Mystics by Iris Murdoch. I picked that book up at the library, the physical copy, in August, got more than halfway through, and then I DNF'd because I needed a change of vibe. But I could not stop thinking about it. So I found a digital copy, and I've been continuing off of that, and I've been really enjoying it. I think sometimes it helps to switch the format, especially when you're reading like really lengthy, dense books. So changing from the physical copy to the digital copy has really switched things up for me. And interestingly, I do think I enjoy my reading experience reading existentialists and mystics in the digital form than I do the hard copy, because I went back and forth for a while. I was like, maybe I should check it out, maybe I should buy my own copy. And then I realized, you know, it's so much more readable and accessible for me on the digital format. So that's what I've been reading off of now. It is still a dry and dense book, but my experience has improved in the new digital format that I'm reading from, and in removing the pressure to get through as much as possible, as quickly as possible. So slowing it down has really made reading that kind of book much more accessible and enjoyable and sustainable for me. Another dense book that I have been enjoying reading in the digital format is Carl Jung's Mysterium Coniunctionis. There is a website I found my copy on that shares Jung's work to the public for free, so I downloaded my copy there, and it has been a very slow but enjoyable and insightful read. And then lastly, for my digital reads, I have 2 books that I'm reading for the vibes of nostalgia, and that is All Passion Spent by Vida Sackville-West and Howard's End is on the Landing by Susan Hill. Very nostalgic, bookish type reads. So that has been my September so far and what I've been reading as a slow reader. I'm very proud of myself this month because I actually had very, very, very few DNFs that I hardly even remember. Actually, I'm looking at one right now, the Hard-Boiled Wonderland, and I think that I might revisit that later on, but that was one I DNF'd, maybe like 1 or 2 more, maybe there's like 1 or 2 more. So very few DNFs. I'm really proud about that. And I ended up curating a lot of awesome books to add to my collection. My laptop is finally now back from the repair shop, so I have it at home, and in just a little bit I'm gonna get to writing in my manuscript, and then I'll share my word count after.
And for this session, I have written 28 words, bringing my week's total to 700 words.